Welcome back to Ancestra 777, where we explore the deeper layers of Haitian voodoo, ancestral memory, African spirituality, and the hidden philosophies carried through ritual, symbol, and oral tradition. For this Haitian Flag Day educational series, we are moving beyond symbolism and entering historical structure. Many Haitian Americans are taught that Haiti defeated slavery and became the first Black republic in 1804, but far fewer are taught what happened immediately afterward, how the state was organized, why instability developed so early, why migration became a survival strategy, and why the rural Black majority often received the shortest end of the revolutionary promise. This episode focuses on the years 1801 to 1825, beginning with Toussaint Louverture's constitution and ending with the French indemnity imposed under President Jean-Pierre Boyer. In 1801, Toussaint Louverture issued a constitution for Saint-Domingue, while the colony still officially belonged to France. The constitution abolished slavery permanently and made Toussaint governor for life, but it also declared Roman Catholicism the only publicly recognized religion. This immediately revealed one of the first contradictions of post-revolutionary Haiti. African-derived spiritual traditions had helped sustain resistance during slavery, yet the new political leadership increasingly viewed autonomous African religious gatherings as threats to centralized state authority. Toussaint's government also reinstated plantation-style labor discipline. Although slavery itself was abolished, formerly enslaved people were still expected to remain tied to plantations producing sugar, coffee, and export crops. Military officers enforced agricultural production, because Toussaint believed economic survival depended on maintaining exports. Many formerly enslaved Africans viewed this system as a betrayal of liberation. Freedom to the masses meant land mobility, family autonomy, subsistence farming, and freedom from plantation supervision. As labor pressure intensified, many rural people began migrating away from the plains and deeper into Haiti's mountains. This was essentially a continuation of marronage, the survival strategy used during slavery where Africans escaped plantations to build independent communities in isolated terrain. These early mountain settlements later evolved into the Lakou system, decentralized communal family compounds rooted in African traditions of land sharing, ancestor reverence, subsistence agriculture, livestock economies, and local autonomy. After Toussaint's capture in 1802 and death in France in 1803, Jean-Jacques Dessalines led the final phase of the revolution and declared independence on January 1, 1804. Haiti emerged victorious against Napoleon's army, becoming the first successful slave revolution in world history. Yet independence came with enormous pressures. France, Britain, Spain, and the United States feared Haiti's revolutionary example and isolated the country economically and diplomatically. Dessalines inherited a devastated economy and believed Haiti needed a strong military state to survive foreign invasion. As a result, systems of forced agricultural production continued after independence. Large plantations remained under military supervision, and agricultural workers were often prohibited from freely abandoning state production zones. Although the racial hierarchy of slavery had been destroyed, many peasants believed coercive labor itself had survived under new management. This period also marked the early expansion of Freemasonry among Haiti's military and political elite. Freemasonry had already spread throughout the Atlantic world among revolutionary officers, intellectuals, and political organizers. Many Haitian leaders admired its emphasis on hierarchy, order, fraternity, symbolism, discipline, and elite governance. For the ruling class, Freemasonry represented international legitimacy and entry into global networks of diplomacy and commerce. Meanwhile, Vodou remained associated primarily with the rural Black majority and was often stigmatized by elites attempting to present Haiti as civilized in the eyes of Europe. After Dessalines' assassination in 1806, Haiti split into two separate political systems. Henri Christophe ruled the north, while Alexander Pétion controlled the south. This division reflected two competing visions of post-independence Haiti. Henri Christophe created a centralized kingdom focused on military strength, discipline, construction, and institutional development. Under Christophe, roads, schools, hospitals, fortifications, and administrative systems expanded. The Citadelle La Ferrière and Sans-Souci Palace symbolized his belief that Black sovereignty required organization, engineering, and state power. Christophe actively recruited Black professionals, Protestant missionaries, educators, and skilled migrants from the United States and the Caribbean. He reached out to free Black communities abroad and offered land and opportunity to educated Black migrants willing to help strengthen Haiti. Protestant missionaries became important because they promoted literacy and technical education outside traditional Catholic structures. However, Christophe's modernization projects depended heavily on militarized labor. Rural workers were forced to maintain plantation production under strict state supervision. Many peasants fled southward into Haitian's Republic to escape northern labor enforcement. This created one of Haiti's earliest major internal migration waves caused directly by political and economic policy. In the south, Alexander Haitian distributed land to soldiers and peasants, accelerating the growth of small farming communities. Yet Haitian's Republic also faced serious contradictions. While peasants gained more autonomy, the government struggled economically because export production declined. Urban elites increasingly relied on coffee taxes and imports, while the countryside remained largely disconnected from formal state investment. During this same period, the elite class continued consolidating itself around French language, Catholic culture, and Masonic networks. Freemasonry became deeply embedded within Haiti's officer corps and political leadership. Many leaders believed European-style institutions were necessary for international survival. Vodou, despite remaining central to peasant identity and survival, was rarely embraced publicly by the governing class. When Jean-Pierre Boyer unified Haiti in 1820 after Christophe's collapse, he inherited a nation already divided by class, geography, and ideology. Boyer's presidency became one of the most structurally important periods in Haitian history, because many systems that later damaged the country became institutionalized under his rule. In 1822, Boyer occupied Santo Domingo, unifying the island politically. Maintaining this military occupation required enormous state expenditures, which increased pressure on the Haitian treasury. Then came the catastrophic turning point of 1825. Under threat of French military invasion, Boyer agreed to France's demand that Haiti pay 150 million francs in compensation to former French slaveholders for lost property, including formerly enslaved Africans themselves. To make these payments, Haiti entered devastating debt agreements with French banks. Huge portions of Haiti's national revenues became trapped in foreign debt repayment. To sustain the economy, Boyer intensified the Code Rural policies of 1826, which effectively reintroduced coercive labor structures. Rural peasants were legally tied to agricultural districts and pressured into export production. The state feared that if peasants focused only on subsistence farming, export revenues would collapse and Haiti would default on its debts. Boyer also intentionally neglected and suppressed mass rural education. While a few elite urban schools and lycées operated in Port-au-Prince and major cities, the rural Black majority remained almost entirely excluded from formal education. Boyer believed widespread literacy among peasants would weaken plantation production, because educated rural people might abandon agricultural labor or challenge elite authority. This educational suppression became one of the most important structural foundations of Haiti's future inequality. The elite class received French education, legal training, and administrative preparation, while the peasantry relied on oral traditions, Lecoux survival systems, informal apprenticeships, and ancestral knowledge networks. As labor enforcement intensified and opportunities remained concentrated among elites, migration continued expanding throughout the countryside. Peasants moved into remote mountain regions, crossed border zones, and established semi-isolated agricultural communities designed to remain outside direct state control. Migration in Haitian history did not begin in the 20th century. It began almost immediately after independence as a survival response to forced labor, militarization, debt extraction, and elite neglect. By 1825, Haiti had achieved military independence but remained trapped in deep structural contradictions. The revolutionary masses who fought slavery largely remained excluded from political power, formal education, and institutional development. Meanwhile, the elite class increasingly tied itself to European cultural models, Catholic legitimacy, and Freemasonry, while fearing the autonomy of the rural Black majority. Understanding this early period is essential because it explains the deeper origins of Haiti's later instability, migrations, class warfare, and economic dependency. The flag represented liberation, but the struggle over who would truly benefit from that liberation had only just begun. In this section, we move from 1825 to 1860, a period where Haiti became trapped between revolutionary independence and economic dependency. After President Jean-Pierre Boyer accepted the 1825 French indemnity, Haiti entered a devastating financial arrangement that reshaped the nation for generations. France demanded compensation for the loss of enslaved Africans and colonial property, forcing Haiti to borrow massive loans from French banks to make the payments. This created what many historians describe as a double debt, where Haiti owed both France and foreign bankers simultaneously. To maintain export revenues and satisfy debt obligations, Boyer implemented the Code Rural in 1826, a labor system that restricted the movement of the rural black population and pressured peasants back into export agriculture. Although slavery had officially ended, many peasants viewed these policies as a continuation of plantation discipline under black leadership rather than white colonial masters. The black rural masses increasingly responded through internal migration. Thousands abandoned the plains and retreated deeper into Haiti's mountains to establish Lakou communities built around subsistence farming, livestock, ancestor veneration, communal land sharing, and cultural autonomy. These Lakou systems represented both resistance and survival. Livestock became the central economic backbone of peasant life. Goats, pigs, chickens, and cattle functioned as currency, emergency savings, and social security. If a family needed to pay taxes, bury relatives, survive famine, or handle illness, they sold livestock rather than relying on urban banks or state institutions. This reflected direct continuities with West and Central African economic traditions, where animals symbolized wealth, mobility, and family stability. During this same era, Haitian Vodou remained the spiritual and cultural foundation of the black masses, but the state continued treating it as a threat to elite authority and civilized European standards. Public ceremonies, drumming gatherings, and communal spiritual assemblies were frequently monitored, restricted, or criminalized by local officials. Yet Vodou survived because it was far more than religion. It was social organization, healing knowledge, ancestral memory, agricultural rhythm, and communal identity. Within isolated Lakou networks, Vodou priests and priestesses preserved oral history, herbal medicine, burial customs, dispute resolution, and African-derived philosophies that connected the people to land and ancestry. The peasantry often viewed the state as distant and predatory, while Lakou spirituality functioned as the true emotional and social government of rural life. At the same time, Freemasonry expanded rapidly among Haiti's urban ruling classes. Presidents, military officers, lawyers, merchants, and intellectuals increasingly joined Masonic lodges connected internationally to France, England, and the United States. Freemasonry appealed strongly to the elite because it represented hierarchy, secrecy, diplomacy, political networking, and elite Western respectability. Lodges became unofficial centers of political power where laws, alliances, and leadership transitions were quietly negotiated. This deepened the cultural separation between the urban elite and the rural black majority. While peasants guarded Vodou and Lakou traditions, elites increasingly embraced French language, Catholic institutions, and Masonic structures as symbols of legitimacy and civilization. The growth of Protestantism also began quietly reshaping Haiti during this period. Following the breakdown in relations between Haiti and the Vatican after independence, Protestant missionaries slowly entered the country, particularly Methodists, Baptists, and later Black Protestant groups connected to African American communities. Unlike the Catholic elite educational structure, Protestant missionaries emphasized literacy because believers were expected to read scripture themselves. This created limited but important educational alternatives outside the elite-controlled Catholic sphere. Protestant schools introduced reading, writing, arithmetic, and sometimes English instruction to lower-middle-class artisans, provincial traders, and select rural populations. Although their reach remained small, these schools represented some of the only educational opportunities available outside elite urban institutions. Primary and secondary education remained deeply unequal throughout the country. Elite children in Port-au-Prince, Cap-Haïtien, and Les Cayes could access tutors, lycées, classical French education, rhetoric, mathematics, philosophy, and legal studies. Meanwhile, the rural black masses remained overwhelmingly excluded from formal education. The government intentionally neglected widespread public schooling, because many leaders feared that educated peasants would abandon agricultural labor or challenge elite authority. Literacy therefore became a rare and valuable survival tool within the countryside. One literate individual inside a laku might become responsible for reading contracts, interpreting laws, protecting land claims, writing petitions, or defending the community from corrupt officials and military commanders. Political unrest intensified throughout these decades. Boyer was overthrown in 1843 after years of resentment against debt burdens, authoritarianism, and economic exploitation. His collapse triggered the unstable era often described as the rule of the puppet presidents, elderly black generals placed into office while elite urban interests continued controlling commerce and administration behind the scenes. During this period, peasant frustrations exploded into armed resistance movements. The most important uprising was the Piquet Rebellion led by Jean-Jacques Acaud in the southern peninsula during the 1840s. The Piquets represented rural opposition to merchant monopolies, labor exploitation, elite domination, and political exclusion. Their movements heavily integrated Vodou symbolism and rural communal structures, proving that Vodou remained central to peasant identity and resistance despite official suppression. Migration due to violence and instability became increasingly common. Peasant families fled military raids, forced conscription, taxation, and scorched earth campaigns launched against rebellious regions. Entire communities abandoned ancestral lands and relocated into mountains, forests, and border regions outside effective state control. The Dominican separation from Haiti in 1844 intensified instability even further. Border communities became fluid survival zones where populations constantly moved to escape military recruitment drives and government repression. The rise of Faustin Soulouque in 1847 marked another major turning point. Unlike previous leaders who concealed or distanced themselves from African-derived spirituality, Soulouque openly embraced aspects of Vodou culture and surrounded himself with spiritual advisors connected to the black masses. Many peasants viewed him as culturally closer to them than previous mulatto elites. However, despite this symbolic embrace of Vodou, structural conditions for the rural majority remained harsh. Soulouque launched repeated invasions against the Dominican Republic between 1849 and 1856, draining the countryside through forced military conscription. Thousands of peasant men were pulled from farms and sent into disastrous military campaigns where many died from hunger, disease, and exposure rather than combat itself. The agricultural economy weakened as farms lost laborers, while women, children, and elderly relatives increasingly migrated toward urban outskirts searching for survival. Economic mobility for the rural class remained extremely limited during this period. A few individuals climbed socially through military service, livestock accumulation, craftsmanship, local trade, or religious influence within Laku communities. However, systemic advancement remained rare because wealth, education, state offices, and commercial power stayed concentrated among urban elites tied to Freemasonry, French institutions, and merchant networks. By 1860, Haiti had become a deeply divided nation. The elite classes increasingly aligned themselves with European cultural models and centralized authority, while the black rural majority survived through Laku systems, Vodou traditions, livestock economies, migration strategies, and ancestral communal networks built largely outside the state itself. In this section, we move from 1860 to 1910, a period where Haiti became increasingly controlled by debt, elite Eurocentrism, foreign commercial penetration, and cultural repression aimed directly at the black rural majority. Although Haiti remained politically independent on paper, the daily reality for most peasants was continued exploitation, forced labor structures, limited education, migration caused by violence, and systematic exclusion from national advancement. The defining turning point of this era was the 1860 Concordat signed by President Fabre Geffrard and the Vatican. This agreement restored official relations between Haiti and the Roman Catholic Church after decades of tension following independence. The Haitian elite believed European recognition and civilization could only be achieved by aligning Haiti culturally with France and the Catholic world. As a result, French priests and nuns were invited into Haiti and given enormous authority over education, morality, and social order. The Church quickly became one of the main instruments of cultural assimilation. Catholic schools punished children for speaking Creole, taught European superiority through language and religion, and portrayed African-derived traditions as primitive and backward. Vodou practitioners were hunted, humiliated, jailed, and forced underground through anti-superstition campaigns carried out jointly by priests and state officials. Drums, sacred objects, and shrines were publicly burned. Yet these attacks unintentionally strengthened syncretism. Rural Haitians increasingly hid Loa behind Catholic saints, masking African spirituality beneath Christian symbolism to preserve ancestral traditions under persecution. During this same period, rare traditions expanded as both spiritual ceremony and resistance culture. Emerging from rural communal processions tied to Vodou ceremonial cycles, Rera also became a social response to state and church repression. Rural communities used coded songs, bamboo instruments, ritual movement, and collective marching as ways to preserve African memory, communicate resistance, and maintain solidarity under anti-superstition crackdowns. What elites dismissed as disorder or superstition often functioned as political survival for the black peasantry. Meanwhile, Haiti's ruling classes increasingly organized themselves through Freemasonry. The most influential Masonic body became the Grand Orient Deity, formally linked ideologically and diplomatically with major European lodges such as the Grand Orient de France and other Atlantic Masonic networks. Presidents, military officers, lawyers, merchants, and elite intellectuals participated heavily in lodge culture. Freemasonry represented international respectability, elite governance, hierarchy, diplomacy, and access to foreign commercial relationships. While the black rural masses guarded Vodou and Lekou traditions, the urban elite increasingly embraced French language, Catholicism, and Masonic structures as symbols of intelligence and civilization. This divide shaped education profoundly. During the same decades, African Americans in the United States were establishing institutions such as Howard University, Fisk University, Hampton Institute, and Tuskegee Institute to train black teachers, engineers, craftsmen, agricultural specialists, and intellectuals. The Haitian state largely refused to create mass educational or technical systems for peasants. Haitian elites funded lycées, law schools, and classical French academies for urban families while leaving the rural majority almost completely illiterate. The government intentionally neglected rural education because elites feared educated peasants would resist labor exploitation and challenge state authority. Most rural Haitians learned survival through oral tradition, apprenticeships, farming knowledge, herbal medicine, craftsmanship, and Lekou communal systems rather than formal schools. Technical education in engineering, architecture, industrial manufacturing, or advanced agriculture was never seriously expanded for the black masses. The state preferred importing European engineers and foreign contractors instead of training its own rural population. At the same time, the Haitian government continued maintaining labor systems that heavily burdened the countryside. Heavy agricultural taxation, military conscription, and labor restrictions kept peasants trapped economically. Coffee remained the backbone of the economy, yet the rural producers received little state investment in return. The government repeatedly prioritized debt repayment, elite commerce, and foreign business relationships over improving peasant living conditions. One of the clearest examples of corruption came through the infamous 1875 French loan negotiated under President Michel Domingue and his influential associate Septimus Rameau. The Haitian government borrowed enormous sums from French banks supposedly to modernize the country through railroads, ports, and infrastructure. Instead, much of the money disappeared through corruption, inflated commissions, and foreign financial manipulation. Haiti inherited massive additional debt, while receiving very little real development. The population reacted with outrage. Peasants already burdened by taxes and poverty viewed the new debt as another betrayal by elites aligned with foreign interests. Public anger intensified so severely that Septimus Rameau, widely blamed for the corruption surrounding the loan, was assassinated in 1876. His death symbolized growing resentment against governments perceived as selling the country to foreign bankers while neglecting the rural black majority. Throughout these decades, Haiti's elite classes developed increasingly whitewashed European identities. Many urban elites viewed themselves culturally closer to France than to the black peasantry of their own country. French remained the language of law, education, administration, and prestige, while Creole was stigmatized as inferior. Business partnerships overwhelmingly favored Europeans, especially French and German merchants. Infrastructure projects, banking arrangements, Shipping concessions and commercial contracts often enriched foreign firms and local elite families simultaneously while peasants remained excluded from economic advancement. German commercial influence expanded dramatically during the late 19th century. German merchants married into affluent mulatto families and established powerful German-Haitian business networks controlling shipping, utilities, import-export houses, and infrastructure contracts. Jewish merchant families connected to Caribbean and Middle Eastern trade networks also integrated gradually into elite commercial circles through marriage and finance, creating Jewish mulatto commercial dynasties closely tied to urban wealth and international banking. Near the end of this period, Christian Arab migrants from Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine began arriving in Haiti during the 1880s and 1890s. Unlike the established coastal elites, many Arab traders traveled directly into rural Haiti selling cloth, tools, household goods, and imported products to peasants. Rural communities often favored them because they extended credit and physically reached isolated mountain zones ignored by elite merchants. This created intense hostility from the old mulatto elite, German commercial houses, and integrated Jewish mulatto merchant networks. The elite classes viewed Arab traders as dangerous economic competitors disrupting established monopolies. Xenophobic campaigns emerged portraying Syrians and Lebanese migrants as uncivilized outsiders threatening Haitian commerce. Political pressure mounted to restrict Arab trade licenses, limit their economic mobility, and exclude them socially. These tensions laid the foundation for the anti-Syrian laws and riots that would intensify after 1900. Protestantism also expanded gradually during this era through Methodist, Baptist, Episcopal, and African Methodist Episcopal missionary networks. Protestant schools sometimes provided basic literacy, arithmetic, and religious education outside Catholic control. However, Protestantism remained relatively limited compared to Catholic dominance and rural voodoo practice. Many elites distrusted Protestantism because of its association with Black American influence and lower social classes. Political instability and migration continued shaping peasant life throughout these decades. Civil wars, military coups, forced conscription, and violent uprisings repeatedly devastated the countryside. Entire villages were burned during conflicts between rival factions. Rural populations fled into mountains, forests, borderlands, Cuba, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic searching for safety and survival. Migration became a permanent survival strategy against state violence, economic exploitation, and political instability. By 1910, Haiti remained trapped between symbolic independence and structural dependency. The Black peasantry continued sustaining the nation through agriculture, livestock economies, Lakou networks, and Vodou spirituality, while the elite classes increasingly aligned themselves with European finance, foreign commerce, Catholic institutions, and Masonic power structures. The descendants of the revolution remained politically free, yet economically marginalized, culturally persecuted, and systematically excluded from the educational and technological advancements shaping the modern world. In this section, we move from 1910 to 1934, the era of financial takeover, military occupation, racial domination, forced labor, peasant resistance, and the restructuring of Haiti under direct American control. This period permanently transformed Haiti's economy, political sovereignty, class structure, and migration patterns, while deepening the suffering of the Black rural majority who had already endured over a century of exploitation after independence. The occupation did not begin suddenly in 1915. Its foundation was built financially years earlier. By 1910, Haiti remained trapped in debt from the 1825 indemnity and later corrupt French loans. The Haitian government desperately sought foreign investment to modernize infrastructure, especially ports and railroads. American businessman to Darby secured major concessions connected to the Port-au-Prince wharf and railroad development projects. These concessions gave American corporate interests growing influence over Haiti's transportation and trade systems before the military invasion even began. At the same time, Haiti reorganized its national bank into the Banque Nationale de la République d'Haïti. Because the Haitian government lacked sufficient capital, powerful Wall Street financiers purchased controlling shares in the institution. The most important figures behind this financial takeover were Frank A. Vanderlip, president of National City Bank of New York, Roger L. Farnham, vice president and Caribbean strategist for the bank, and J.P. Morgan Jr., whose financial network supported portions of the reorganization. These men did not approach Haiti philanthropically. Their goal was to control customs revenues, banking operations, and Caribbean trade routes through American financial power. Under the restructuring agreement, Haiti's customs revenues flowed directly through an American-controlled banking system. This meant Wall Street interests effectively controlled the treasury of an independent Black republic. Roger Farnham became especially influential. He openly argued that Haiti required American military occupation to secure U.S. investments and eliminate nationalist instability. 4 years later, in December 1914, these financial arrangements enabled one of the most shocking violations of Haitian sovereignty in modern history. U.S. Marines arrived aboard the USS Machias and entered the Haitian National Bank in Port-au-Prince. Because American interests already controlled the bank and the wharf infrastructure, there was little resistance. Approximately $500,000 in Haitian gold reserves were removed from the vaults, transported to the ship, and taken directly to National City Bank vaults in New York. Haiti effectively lost control of its financial reserves before the official military occupation even began. The United States justified increasing intervention by claiming Haiti was unstable and vulnerable to German influence during World War I. German merchants had become economically powerful in Haiti through marriage alliances with elite mulatto families and involvement in shipping and commerce. The United States feared Germany might establish strategic influence near the Panama Canal and Caribbean shipping lanes. However, economic control and imperial expansion were equally central motivations behind American policy. In July 1915, after the violent collapse of President Vilbrun Guillaume Sam's government, U.S. Marines invaded Haiti. The occupation quickly revealed the racial ideology shaping American actions. Many Marines came from the segregated American South and carried openly racist beliefs about Black people and Black self-government. Haitian society was viewed through the lens of white supremacy and colonial paternalism. American officials frequently described Haitians as incapable of governing themselves and justified occupation as a civilizing mission. Once in control, the Marines forced Haitian political elites, including Black, mulatto, and German commercial factions, to surrender authority. Parliament was dissolved at gunpoint after legislators refused to approve a new constitution favorable to American interests. The occupation authorities then imposed the 1918 Constitution, drafted partly under the supervision of Franklin D. Roosevelt, then Assistant Secretary of the Navy. This constitution overturned one of the central achievements of the Haitian Revolution by removing restrictions on foreign land ownership. The occupation also dramatically shifted economic power. German commercial influence was weakened and in some cases dismantled during World War I. The United States increasingly favored Syrian Lebanese Christian merchants and established Jewish commercial houses because they were viewed primarily as businessmen rather than nationalist political actors. These merchant families expanded their roles in import-export trade, retail distribution, ports, and finance under American oversight. While they were not handed the economy entirely, the occupation strengthened commercial networks more aligned with international business interests than Haitian nationalist politics. For the Black rural population, the occupation often resembled a return to slavery. The United States revived the corvée labor system, forcing peasants into unpaid labor to construct roads, bridges, and infrastructure projects. Rural Haitians were rounded up by Marines and Haitian gendarmes, chained together, and compelled to work under armed supervision. Many peasants viewed this as slavery reborn under foreign occupation. The roads and infrastructure built during the occupation did modernize transportation and connected isolated regions more effectively. Public health campaigns also reduced some disease outbreaks. However, these projects primarily benefited military mobility, export agriculture, and foreign commercial interests rather than peasant autonomy. Rural communities paid the human cost of modernization while receiving few of the long-term benefits. Education under the occupation also reflected racial and economic priorities. The Americans distrusted Haiti's traditional intellectual institutions because many educated Haitians strongly opposed foreign rule. Classical lycées and nationalist academic circles were marginalized while vocational education expanded. Through the Service Technique program, American administrators promoted agricultural labor training, carpentry, masonry, and mechanical maintenance rather than advanced intellectual or political education. The occupation sought to produce disciplined laborers and technicians, not nationalist scholars, lawyers, or independent political thinkers. This educational strategy mirrored racial ideas common in the Jim Crow American South. Many American officials believed Black populations should receive industrial and manual education rather than higher intellectual training. As a result, Haiti's educational system under occupation prioritized labor efficiency over broad national empowerment. The rural population resisted fiercely. The Cacos resistance movement, led by Charlemagne Perrault and Benoit Battreville, became one of the most significant anti-colonial struggles in Caribbean history. Peasant fighters used mountain terrain, guerrilla warfare, and rural support networks to challenge the occupation. Vodou ceremonies and spiritual leadership often played important roles in organizing resistance and maintaining morale. The U.S. military responded brutally. Villages suspected of supporting rebels were attacked, crops destroyed, and suspected collaborators executed. Charlemagne Perrault was assassinated in 1919 after betrayal by an infiltrator. His body was photographed tied to a door and circulated publicly by occupation forces as psychological warfare intended to terrorize the population. Instead, many Haitians viewed him as a martyr for national sovereignty. The occupation also intensified migration patterns. Thousands of Haitians fled violence, forced labor, land dispossession, and economic hardship by moving deeper into mountain regions or leaving Haiti entirely. Many migrated to Cuba and the Dominican Republic to work on sugar plantations controlled largely by American companies. Others relocated internally to overcrowded urban zones seeking survival opportunities outside direct military control. Even sections of the old elite suffered under occupation. Mulatto political families, nationalist intellectuals, and traditional Masonic power networks lost major influence as American officials centralized authority. Haitian presidents during the occupation answered largely to American administrators rather than domestic political coalitions. Newspapers were censored, dissidents jailed, and nationalist voices monitored closely. By the end of the occupation in 1934, Haiti had gained roads, ports, centralized administration, and expanded infrastructure, but at immense social cost. The Black rural majority endured forced labor, military violence, educational suppression, economic displacement, and foreign domination. The occupation strengthened commercial monopolies tied to foreign interests while weakening nationalist sovereignty. It also established patterns of migration dependency, centralized military policing, and externally influenced governance that continued shaping Haiti long after the Marines officially departed. This has been part 1 of our Haitian Flag Day historical series, tracing the roots of Haiti's struggle from 1801 through the end of the United States occupation in 1934. We explored the promise of liberation, the rise of elite-controlled governments, the suppression of Vodou and African cultural identity, the weaponization of debt, the exploitation of the Black rural masses through forced labor systems, the growth of Freemasonry and foreign influence, the manipulation of education, the rise of merchant monopolies, and finally the American occupation that reshaped Haiti's economy and sovereignty for generations to come. What this history teaches us is that Haiti's crisis did not begin yesterday. The instability, migration, poverty, and violence so many Haitian families experienced are connected to over a century of political betrayal, foreign intervention, economic extraction, and internal class divisions. The Haitian peasantry, the Lakou system, the Vodou communities, the Cacos resistance fighters, and the ordinary laboring people carried the burden of survival while powerful interests fought over ports, banks, land, and foreign recognition. For those of us in the Haitian diaspora, especially Haitian Americans, this history is deeply personal. Many of us are the descendants of people who fled political violence, military dictatorship, economic collapse, forced displacement, land loss, foreign occupation, or social instability. Some came by boat, some by airplane, some through the Bahamas, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Canada, France, or directly into the United States. But behind almost every migration story is a historical chain connected to the systems we discuss today. In the next episode, we will move deeper into the post-occupation era and examine how the age of the boat people continued long after the Marines left Haiti. We will explore the rise of American-backed political structures, the consolidation of oligarch power, the transformation of migration into a survival strategy, the evolution of Haitian nationalism, the Duvalier era, anti-Haitian discrimination across the Caribbean and the Americas, and how the children of the diaspora inherited both the trauma and resilience of a people forced to survive against overwhelming historical pressure. Thank you for walking through this history with me. Continue studying deeply, continue questioning carefully, and access